Welcome to Hassle-Free RE, the show where we share tips, tricks, and stories from the short-term rental industry and business alike. Hosted by Dave Menapace and Will Van Wickler. They'll help you navigate the exciting and ever-evolving world of short-term rentals. Whether you're a seasoned host or just starting out, they've got something just for you. In each episode, they'll bring you insider insights, expert advice, and real-life stories from hosts and industry professionals who have been through it all. They'll cover everything from maximizing your rental income and profits to creating unforgettable guest experiences and handling unexpected day-to-day challenges with ease. Are you ready to discover the secrets to running a successful short-term rental business without the hassle? Then let's get started. This is Hassle-Free RE.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Hassle-Free RE. Just a reminder to everyone that starting next week, you can actually catch these episodes on Apple, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, and pretty much anywhere there's a podcast, you can find us. And it's going to be pretty cool. Reworked, retuned, all the good stuff. Find it right there if you want to listen to this again and again and again. With that, I'm Dave Menapace, president of the 5-Star Co-host, president of Launchpad Consulting, joined here by New England's #1 short-term rental real estate agent, Mr. Will Van Wickler. How you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Taking a hot minute off Cape Cod, and I'm getting my butt right back there tomorrow. So
let's go. You got to work on that tan. Get it in while you can.
Yeah. I'm already losing it 24 hours being back on the mainland, but I'm excited to be back there and be on vacation pretty much the rest of the summer. Got a couple trips up to Maine for some property launches I'm pretty stoked about. And life is good. We're in peak season. It's always fun when we're in peak season.
And then we'll be in a different peak season in just a couple short months. So
honestly, I'm so happy the way I cornered this part of the country, as it relates to the beach markets in the summer. Got some South Shore markets that are super strong year round. And then, I'll be honest, our Sunday River properties are performing just as well this summer as they were over the winter. But the cool thing is you don't have snow removal and some of the other things that eat into your margins in the winter happening in the summer. So, it's sort of the same story. The houses that have been online for at least 6 months before the summer, meaning they launched towards the end of 2023, they're annihilating it. The ones that we launched more in May and June, they're just going to take a little bit longer. By this winter, they'll be crushing it. By next summer, they'll be crushing it. It just takes a little time in the market to get the engines revving. But I've been really psyched. And it kind of took me by surprise when I've been looking out, doing my revenue management and looking out into the fall and starting to look at pricing. And, we adjust our pricing on a weekly basis, even though we use dynamic pricing with Price Labs, we're still in there quite a bit. And I'm like, holy crap, I have to go out quite a ways before I have to start fiddling with any unbooked dates. So owners have been happy. We've been happy. Yeah, my house, I think we're at 90% occupancy up in Maine in August, which kind of crept up on me. So things are good, dude. Things are good.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me is trying to show some of my listings that are short-term rentals. I can't even get in them, which sounds like too good to be true, but it's been a busy summer and analyzing property every single day like I do, looking at competitors' calendars or just, properties in the market. I'm like, oh my God, it's back the way it used to be. Last year was kind of a weird transition year, and we're right back where we should be, which is awesome.
Totally. If you're on it with your revenue management, there's no reason you shouldn't be crushing it this summer. So that's been good. And dude, I'm super excited for the topic that we have today. The topic is how to craft the perfect offer. And this was sort of an idea that came to us earlier today, and helping some clients craft an offer that helped them beat out 10 other competing strong offers on a house. And we, of course, know that offers can vary depending on the market, the home type, a whole bunch of factors. But, today I kind of want to pick your brain on how to help people craft the perfect offer so they can get the house they want.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll
And this is
start it
something
there.
I could talk about, you and I could just nerd out on for
Yeah.
hours because there are a lot of small, tiny details that don't feel like they matter, that make a huge difference. And overseeing almost $100 million in transaction volume at this point,
Yeah.
I've seen a little bit of everything and what works and what doesn't work, and in different states too, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine, and with you
Yeah.
being in Massachusetts. So I'm really excited to jump in.
Totally, totally. Okay, so maybe, we'll just go through the entire list, but maybe what's the number one mistake you see, especially with newer investors or just generally like newer home buyers? What's maybe one mistake you see either in their attitude or their approach when wanting to submit that first offer? Maybe it's like the first real house they're submitting an offer on. Like, kind of what do you see and what are some of the things you have to start coaching them on?
Yeah, the first thing that I always really dive in on is education around what the purchase and sale agreement even is and all the terms that go into that. What I see is whether it's a first time buyer, we were just talking about a coaching client of yours, and I've seen it in my
Yeah.
markets where they've never purchased a property before. Maybe they're very high income earning. I had a client last year who lived in New York City. She wasn't going to buy a home there. Buying a short term rental was her first purchase. So she didn't understand what earnest money was or inspections. So I always really like to go through and explain what each term of the contract is and how it relates to the seller, and then also set the expectation of here's what an aggressive offer would look like. Here's what a pretty weak offer would look like. Because I think presently agents are not really telling people what needs to happen to get offers accepted. They're kind of just running with what people want to do and what maybe worked when they bought their first home 10, 15 years ago.
Right, right. Yeah, to that end, I do see a lot of times, especially newer agents, rather than being advocates for their clients, they try and be friends and try and establish a rapport based on friendship. And um, sometimes that's not always telling people what they want to hear. Right. And so
Right.
let's talk about first, how does somebody craft an offer that shows that they really want a home while at the same time keeping it as simple as possible? What are some levers that people can pull to accomplish that?
Yeah, the first thing is getting over the fact that working with the listing agent is going to be a benefit to you, right? All these states, the agent owes one client fiduciary responsibility. So 9 times out of 10, it's in your best interest to have a buyer agent. And the first thing would be have your buyer agent talk to the listing agent. What is important to the seller? I ask this
Totally.
question all the time and it gets missed all the time. I will get offers on listings I have. I'm like, I don't even know if I've ever talked to you before. Asking the question of what's important to the seller is so key because I see all the time it's not always about price. Maybe they're willing to take 20,000 less if they can use the house for a couple more days. So
Sure.
asking your agent what's important to the seller is like the number one thing I see everybody mess up and they don't even think about it.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally, totally agree. And yeah, to your point, when we talk about selling homes, right? Like I'm selling a home, right? It's not happening on market because there's a whole bunch of things that happen on market that I just don't want to have to deal with. Speed to close was important to me and we had a number that was really fair and it worked and everything's moving forward, right? And so um totally agree, right? What's important to me might not be the same level of importance to somebody else. When I go to sell my primary residence, to me, it's important that I get somebody that really wants the home that's going to be able to use it and love it and stay in this town for a long time. I don't care about getting the highest price. I don't at all. But my mindset is a little different. What's also interesting, especially when we talk about STRs, is I do see a lot of people trip over a couple grand here or there. And you and I always
All the
talk about
time.
it. We know that nobody's keeping these houses generally for 30 years, but at least over the general lifespan, even the 7 to 10 years that someone usually holds an asset for, a few $1,000s here or there is it's not going to break your deal. If it is, then it was a bad deal.
Well, I'll say people get their ego involved and going down
Yeah.
the chain, like the mistakes I see is people get ego involved in negotiation and they want to try to
Yeah.
beat up or win. If you're in a negotiation to win, you're going to lose every single time. And I
Yeah.
always tell people, plug it into your pro forma. At what point does the number not make sense anymore? And let's write our offer based on how it makes sense and if it even
I
makes sense for
totally
your
agree.
situation. Don't just write the offer because you think 650 sounds good or it feels good. Does it
Right.
even make sense for you? Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. And like kind of the BS around like writing a funny kind of odd number because that might get like no.
Stop
Like
playing
when I
games.
yeah, exactly. And so it's interesting, what Will was alluding to a few minutes ago is that, I had some clients, it's their they're coaching clients of mine. They're not real estate clients. They're not consulting. I coach an STR Secrets mastermind, and they're students of mine there, and they're going to buy. It's going to be their first home ever, and it's going to be a short-term rental. And they want to put in, they knew it was going to be really competitive because the home was priced really competitively. Kudos to the listing agent there, and they knew they wanted to get a lot of offers in a market that's really competitive in New York. And we ended up having a discussion because they wanted to run their offer by me. And I pretty much tore it up and said, look, you don't want to, in these cases where it's going to be really competitive, having things like $1,000 escalation clauses and um, all these like little different fancy things. I just said, look, put your best foot forward, like show your best face first, right? And as long as the numbers work, or I shouldn't even say work, as long as the numbers align with your goals for how you want to use the home, because those can be two different things, right? Just like go for it. Show that you want the home. Don't do an escalation clause. I've lost on properties because we put an escalation clause in, even though we started at the same number and they went with the people without the escalation clause because they're like, we just didn't want any of that crap in there. We wanted something clean that we understood. We didn't want to have to do math and see where you capped out. So we just went with that because it was simpler. It had fewer bullet points. I've seen a lot today, like for sellers, that the simpler the offer, the better. The simpler, the better.
And the way I explain it is because the consumer and the buyers don't realize, like, although you're an investor, having to explain, you got to rely on the listing agent. And a lot of times, listing agents, they're not super, super savvy with the numbers and economics in the short term rental space, for instance. Then you got to rely on them to pitch this to sellers who oftentimes are older age, right? And I
Mhm.
find that's where the communication comes in. I'll get a sense for if it's multiple offers asking about the escalation clause, will your seller even look at that? A lot of times the answer is no, because like Dave said, it confuses them. And I've had it where they're just like, integrity wise, we rather go with the person that just was straight up in the beginning. And that's a real thing. And that's where the communication comes in. And also the communication comes in of, is there actually going to be multiple offers? Because
Right.
there's a lot of these times where, hey, maybe they think they're going to get multiple offers. You really want to make sure you actually know what you're writing an offer on, if there's
Totally.
competition, because that'll drastically change things there.
Yeah. Are you seeing sellers put as many deadlines on when offers are due as you did during COVID? I haven't seen it in
I'm not.
Massachusetts, but yeah.
No, they're taking the best one that makes the most sense for their situation. And in my eyes, right now, it's all about the cleanliness of the offer. So, like
Mhm.
going down the line, earnest money deposit. It's different in all these different states, but earnest money deposit shows you have skin in the game. I see so many
Totally.
people on listings of mine where it's $1 million house, they're putting 5,000 down. That
Right.
doesn't inspire any confidence to me as the home seller. And also, if you're going to put 20% down anyway, what's putting $25,000? I'm a big proponent in putting big
Totally.
deposits down if you're comfortable, knowing you can
Yeah.
get it back if there's an inspection issue, but it's like, bam, I am
Yeah.
serious. Maybe my price isn't where you want it to be, but I'm not screwing around and I'm going to buy this house. And that is the first key point that you brought up that I think we need to touch on is a nice earnest money deposit and really taking that term of the contract seriously.
In Massachusetts, the expectation a lot of times is 5% as the earnest money deposit. So if you have
Yep.
$1 million house, that's 50K. Or, when we know it's going to be multiple offers and my clients are capped at a certain amount for like maybe what their pre-approval allows, we've even offered the entire down payment as earnest money deposit. And when you do that, you can beat out an offer that's 5 or 10% higher. Now, once again, it's really only smart, in my opinion. That strategy works really great if you're able to still accomplish some level of due diligence and have an out, because that is very, very risky at some point,
And
right?
it's situation dependent, right? But I think that's a term people fly over. It's just like, oh, $2,000, because that's what I did on the last house I bought. It's really, it's working with somebody who understands the market, but also understanding this shows the strength of your offer. And that's really the first term people see is, well, it's price, earnest money deposit. The other term that I think people fumble over is response time. They're not giving sellers adequate response time for offers. And honestly, it's pissing people off. The older generation selling houses, when they feel rushed, it starts to create animosity. And through negotiations, I always go for a win-win situation. But I find a lot of buyer agents or a lot of buyers trying to bully sellers into doing things. That's not how you win in negotiations. And that's a small detail. But I always like to give people at least 24 hours as a professional courtesy. And it's been brought up by listing agents in the past how much they appreciated that. A lot of times these people have owned these houses for more than 10 years. They have a lot to think about. We need to respect that and give them some time.
Dude, that is so good, right? Unless I kind of feel like unless you're coming in cash and you're showing a bank statement, you're showing a bank statement and you're at least at asking, right? You're at least at asking price and making it, making it so they'd be totally silly for saying no, waiving. Like in Massachusetts, I have seen, especially during COVID, cash waiving everything, can close whenever the seller wants, but we're submitting this at noon and we'll give you till 10 o'clock at night. And here's our bank statement. And upon signature, we're giving you all of it. Like that's it. Like I have seen that at times and I'm always like, wow, we've gotten to a new level of home buying. But generally speaking, to your point, right? Like I think at least 24 hours. But I usually say, like, I even before submitting that offer, having the discussion with the listing agent, like, hey, would the sellers be okay with 24 hours? A lot of times it's, I definitely see this, especially with the older generation. They're not going on the computer to look at it. That listing agent has to print it out, drive it over, and then have a discussion about the whole thing, and then they'll actually sign it. Like that's still a thing. So that's a very good point. What other levers can somebody pull to make an offer really, really clean?
Yeah. So inspection contingencies, to me, it's understanding the timeline. In Maine, it's business days. So a lot of buyers from out of state will come to me and say, I need 14 days, right? Well, then I have to explain it's business days in the state of Maine. And same goes in the state of Vermont as well. It's understanding and working with the agent, what is the typical inspection contingency timeline that you see and how quickly can we get them done, right? We want to make sure buyers are protected and we want to give them the right to that, but also not extend it so far that we're kicking the can down the road and keeping the sellers wondering. And then also being clear on the due diligence we intend to do. I always like to do as much due diligence as we can up front, so we're not negotiating issues that we already know about, right? So it's understanding. In Maine, we see a lot of septic inspection, general building inspection. It's not going to take us more than 7 days, right? So we're going to keep that tight. And in some situations, we'll make it even tighter if we need to, right? So we'll make the call and say, hey, we got multiple offers. We need to do this in 3 days. So it's understanding the due diligence timeline and also getting a lot of that work done up front, so you're not just spinning people's wheels. And what I would say with that, the thing that I see buyer agents drop all the time is not tracking their timelines and sending repair requests 3 hours before your timeline expires, right? So it's not only asking for the proper time on an inspection, but also getting your repair requests in before the deadline so you have adequate time to negotiate the issues, get quotes if you need to, and make sure it's a win-win situation. So I'd say inspections is a really important topic to talk about.
Yeah, totally. Also, like, and I see this I don't see this needed quite as much, but anymore, unless it's a really competitively priced. But sometimes doing a walk and talk inspection during the open
Yep.
house. So in Massachusetts, most of the houses that come online in a given week come online Wednesday or Thursday. At least the inspection companies we work with in Massachusetts just need 48 hours notice to be able to do an inspection. And what they'll actually do, what a walk and talk inspection is you will not get the report. They will not create a report for you, even though it's pretty much like an automatic thing these days, sort of like through an app. But essentially, you'll get an inspector for like an hour and you'll walk the house with them and they'll tell you what they see. It won't be as invasive as a traditional inspection. It's more like, what am I seeing? Are there any issues? They're not going to be necessarily going under a house in crawl spaces and checking water temperature with a thermogun or anything like that. But they'll at least give you a good general idea if you have a feeling it's going to be a really busy one, there's going to be a lot of offers. And then waiving the inspection, like that's how we've waived inspections. But at the same time, it's also how I've walked away from deals. And yeah, I had to spend about $200 to get some education on the home, but it's better than getting into it on a house I don't want and figuring that out when I've already given earnest my deposit and wasting a seller's time. So that's been one way we've been able to keep offers really, really clean in very special circumstances. Not needed quite as much as it used to be, though.
Right. And I always say, to buyers, I ask them, what's your biggest concern, right? So if you're fine with everything in the house, but your question is about the roof, right? It's pretty easy for us to get a specific part of the house inspected or looked at by a qualified professional. And then I always just
Yeah.
run through the worst case scenario with people. For instance, if you're waiving inspections, which we've done on very hot properties and the buyer was comfortable with it, it's like, all right, here's the worst case, right? Look at the seller's disclosure. The boiler's 10 years old, right? The roof's 10 years old. We're probably good there. What is the worst that could happen? And you can budget appropriately for it. We're not saying to waive inspections, but if it comes down to it, that's a very, very important term that sellers are looking for, because in a multiple offer situation, they want to take the deal that's absolutely going to close with no renegotiation.
Well, to add to that, if you do waive an inspection, go get yourself a home warranty for a year, right?
Yep.
Go get a home warranty. Once you end up getting the house and closing, get yourself an inspection. If there's issues at that point, leverage your home warranty to help get some of these things fixed. A home warranty is just a small insurance policy on the home, usually costs a few grand a year, depending on your deductible. And, you can be more or less or whatever it is. But essentially what that's for is like, if anything major systems break in the home, that home warranty will cover the cost of it. And it's not something a lot of people really get anymore, but I have seen sellers, especially sometimes for new builds in hot suburban markets for primary residences. I have seen sellers of brand new, new builds pay for 1 year of a home warranty for a buyer just in case anything fails. And it just kind of sweetens the pot for drawing in buyers sometimes.
That's a great point. And then I'll add to that is maybe you don't have an inspection when you purchase it. Maybe you get one after. That's something I see a lot because people just want to know what they need to do with the house. It's really for informational purposes only. A lot of times when buyers ask me, well, we don't want to waive the inspection, but what if we did it for informational purposes only? To me, it's like that holds no weight to the seller because you still have an inspector in the house. You either waive them or you don't.
Yeah.
And if you want it for informational purposes, do it after you close at your convenience, because if you do it for informational purposes only, you really can't renegotiate. You're either in or out of the deal. And if you want the deal, that's pretty much what you got to do. Thankfully, we're
Totally.
starting to see a lot more home inspections. So that's a term that we can loosen
Yeah.
up on a little bit.
Oh, totally. I totally agree. Now, how about the down payment? If you're kind of in a competitive situation, I know that you and I play in a world where 10% down is pretty normal. Um, wrong, right, and different doesn't always look as impressive to a seller, even though it really doesn't make a difference. What are some things people can do sort of on the financing side to sweeten the pot, but also maybe end with putting the same amount down that they were hoping to?
Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a couple different things. The first thing is working with a local lender in the market or a highly reputable and highly communicative lender. There's a lot of awesome short term rental specific lenders that I've worked with. Um, out of state, but they're very communicative, which is extremely helpful. Because when a listing agent sees that pre-qualification letter, which should be on any offer, they want to make sure they can get this deal to the closing table. What I like to do is, especially with 10% down, is attach the lender to the email to the listing agent and have them call the listing agent and go to bat and tell them how great these buyers are, how highly qualified they are. Because when sellers see, and even listing agents see 10% down, they oftentimes think, okay, the buyer's strapped for cash, they barely qualify. So then the second thing comes into your agent going to bat for you and communicating, which I do on every single offer. Hey, this is a 10% down second home loan. The reason they're putting 10% down is because it's a better interest rate, it's a better product, it fits their situation. It has nothing to do with the strength of the buyer, and they could put more down if they wanted to. So there's no concern there. The other thing, Dave, that we talk about a lot is if you're totally confident in your ability to get financing, the purchase and sale agreement in Maine is subject to you getting a 10% down loan, for instance, for 30 years at XYZ interest rate. You can put 20, 30, 45% down there. Just know it's contingent on you getting it. So if you can't get a 20% down loan, but you get 10 and you want to walk away, you're going to lose your earnest money. But these buyers that are highly qualified, their loans already underwritten by the bank. It's just subject to an appraisal, which working with a good lender, they can do that for you. You can put 20% down and still buy with 10% as long as you can get to the closing table. So that's a really great tip and a strategy we use all the time. Having to overcome that 10% down kind of misnomer, putting 20% down, just knowing your risk is if you can't get your 10% down financing, you can't back out of the deal. You're putting 20% down there.
Totally. And it's so great. And so what we usually do here for our buyers is, I'll tell people, just so we know what our options are, see if you can get pre-approved at 10% down, 15% down, 20 and 25. Like it's not very hard for a lender to at least pre-approve at those different amounts if you qualify. So we ask them to do that. And then generally, I know that when I can, I like to try and make it so it's 45 days to close. That way, let's say they put in a formal application, right, at say 10%, and it just doesn't work because their DTI is just over the mark at that point. They still have time to turn back around, do the application at 20 and get the thing over the goal line, because at that point, it just comes down to, do you have the cash for the down payment, generally speaking? Because obviously your monthly payment is less when you put 20% down because you owe less money. So there's a few things that we've done there. Again, to your point, the lender's got to move quickly and efficiently, and you do need to have enough time to be able to exercise these different options.
And I'd say doing a full mortgage application, so you actually know your DTI. Like the lender, we do a lot with Skylar. Like she will go through the file and tell you, like, here are your options, right? You have to put X down. That way you're not surprised and you don't get burned by getting tricky and putting it in the contract and then doing the application. The file's already underwritten by the time you write the offer, so you know exactly where you're at, and you can do these kind of tricky maneuvers in the purchase and sale agreement that might get your offer accepted at a higher rate.
Totally. And just for any of the listeners that want to know, that was Skylar Welch that we're referring to. She's the founder of Main Point Lending. We've had her on a few of these episodes over time. Like fantastic lender, whether it's a primary residence or whether it's a short-term rental or a long-term rental or like whatever it is. She's done a really, really fantastic job. I have yet to see something not close in years of working with her once somebody is adequately pre-approved. So it's pretty impressive. So Will, as we start to wrap this up, are there any final levers other than just like waiving everything that you can think of that, might help keep an offer just simple, easy, and competitive?
Yeah, and we can breeze through these. These are very easy and quick. The first thing is closing date, seeing what works best. Does the seller have rental reservations where maybe they could squeeze out another couple $1,000s with big bookings, right? Because it's not about our purchase price, but if the seller can make $4,000 off of a great rental booking,
there,
right?
Yeah,
that's a reason to accept an offer. Yep.
Exactly.
Then speaking about hot tubs, personal property with second homes and short-term rentals, personal property always comes up. Ask about, are there any exclusions, right? Nothing pisses a seller off more than somebody trying to take their skis or their chairs that they
Right.
want and their family
Favorite
heirlooms.
records. Yeah.
Get in front of it and don't
Yeah.
put it on the purchase and sale agreement, because your bank is going to kick it back. You can't finance
Totally.
personal property. Yep.
Totally. Totally. And to that point, one of the things that I told my students, not my real estate clients, but my students, I think all the furniture is going to be included, and that was going to cost like $15K. And I said, look, do your highest and best offer, like with whatever works for you. And then just tell them, hey, we'll give you an additional 15 grand on top of this cash the day of closing for all the furniture. Cause I just told them it can't go in there. You can't get a mortgage on old furniture.
And work out the terms of the deal first. And I hate to say it, figure out that stuff later. I've seen $1 million deals blow up over a spare refrigerator in the garage. It's nail the deal, get in the deal.
Yeah.
And if we look at this as a real estate investment over time, we can fix things, we can replace things. And let's kind of get into the deal and actually make a win-win situation. So it's nailing the closing date, making sure you understand the personal property exclusions. And then to wrap it up, I'd say understand appraisal contingencies, making sure you're protected if the property doesn't appraise, and then having a really great title attorney ready to go and make sure it's contingent on clean, warrantable title. That's a big thing that it's not the norm in every single state, that it really should be.
Totally. Oh man, this was awesome. I feel like this gives a lot of people a ton of value. There's tons of ways, right, to skin this one, right? There really are. But at the end of the day, also, right, like when submitting an offer, put yourself in the seller's shoes and just think, is the seller going to be looking at something that is interesting to them, but also understandable to them, right? Don't have a million terms in your offer. If you want a house, then go for it and make it look like you want the house and get that house. So,
and it doesn't mean you have to give away the farm, right? I'm putting deals under with huge seller concessions, but it also comes with education and just explanation, right? So educating the other party, explaining why we're doing it, and then making it easy for them to work with us. That's all we want to do, is just make it super easy for them to accept our offer, get us to the closing table so we can start making money.
So true. Well, Mr. Will, someone wants to buy a house. On that note, how do they find you?
Yeah, willvanwickler.com. Book a call. We'll talk about the markets. And once you acquire the house, if you need management, consulting, or maybe you want to buy en masse, Dave, how do we get you?
Just hit me up on davemenapace.com. You can go there. You can find everything I do. You can find how to reach me. You can book a time. You can book a call right on my calendar with me right from there. So davemenapace.com. You can find me on Instagram, Dave_Menapace. We're here for you. Happy to help however we can, even if you just want to bounce some ideas off me or my team. Between Will and I, there's no reason you shouldn't be able to accomplish your goals in New England.
Absolutely. Well, the next time I'll see you up in Bethel.
That's right, my friend. We should do some content up there. Maybe record one of these
maybe
episodes.
A live podcast or something.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I was thinking that too. We're thinking the same thing, my friend.
Awesome. We'll see you next week.
All right. Take care.
And that's a wrap for this episode of Hassle-Free RE. We hope you found today's tips and stories as inspiring and useful as I did. Remember, success in the short-term rental industry is all about learning, adapting, and staying one step ahead. If you enjoyed the show, please take a moment to leave us a review or comment on your favorite platform. Your feedback helps us improve and reach more listeners like you. Plus, we'd love to hear your thoughts and any topics you'd like us to cover in future episodes. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And follow us at Hassle-Free RE on social media for more tips and updates. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, keep it hassle-free.